So, hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio and for my YouTube channel. And I'm joined by a very special fox in the form of Basil Brush. Thank you, Basil, for joining me.
Hello, I'm just playing with my executive chair at the moment. Hang on. I love this. And then you go. It's good, isn't it? I love this. There you go. I just love
Many.
swing. Yeah, brand new. This is my office. Welcome to my office, everybody.
So, how have you been finding working from your office? How has the last year been for you, Basil?
Just like everybody else, I've literally been sort of working from home because, of course, I was a furloughed fox. I mean, can you believe this time, 12 months ago, I was supposed to have been touring with Kerry Katona, doing a pantomime Wizard of Oz and Barney Harwood. We'd booked all our accommodation. We were all ready to go. We were like this, and we were stopped. And suddenly lockdown came, and it was a bit of a shock because I got all these wonderful travel lodges booked all around the country, and I couldn't go and stay in the flipping things. So really, I've got a great big long holiday and travel lodges to look forward to with my little vouchers that I've saved. So of course, that was 12 months ago and everything came to a halt. And of course, what I sort of set up here is a little television studio. Like I've got lights up there, which you can't really see very well. And also behind me, I've got a little desk, because everybody now does this thing. It's the boom boom on Zoom, isn't it? So everybody's zooming around, speaking to each other remotely. And so I decided to sort of build up a little studio here at home, and I got myself on The Last Leg and lots of other programs, and then started helping folks in hospitals with Zoom. I started doing messages for kids in hospitals. Like today, we're out at a hospital in Reading, aren't we?
That's correct. Yep, on
Right.
Hospital Radio Reading.
Hello, Hospital Radio Reading, and giving messages of support to the nurses and all the kids in their wards and things, and doing it remotely like this on Zoom. And I've found that it's been fantastic. I've literally been working from home for about 12 months doing this. But I was lucky last summer that when the lockdown was released slightly, I was able to do outdoor shows. So I went off with my current Mr. Martin Cabell-Reid, and we toured all the pontins and the butlins and all the holiday camps, but it was all outdoors. And of course, whatever the weather can chuck at us, it chucked at us. And I always used to say, it'll be fine in rain, it'll be cool in Goole, and if you live in Lissingdown, take an umbrella. Yeah, boom, boom. So it was a lot of that, performing outdoors, getting me brush soaking wet, and whatever the British weather could chuck at us, it did. And that was my summer.
So, I
Yeah,
mean, so I was going to say, during the height of the pandemic, obviously when no one was really able to do much, did you find
yeah.
yourself learning any new skills or doing anything you don't normally get to do?
Well, what I did, I would often look out of the window in the morning and I'd say, "Stop it, Basil, what are you going to do in the afternoon?" Yeah, because we couldn't go anywhere, could we, during that first lockdown? And I thought to myself, well, we've got to go and get one of these professions, haven't we now, that is proper profession. So I thought, right, what have I got? I've got a brush. And what can I do? It's either sweeping up or something, or I thought painting and decorating. So I decided I painted this room, actually,
Very nice
a
job there
lovely
you've done.
green. Yeah, I painted that green and I retrained as a painter and decorator. And I started to work alongside, this is true, I started working alongside a chap who's an airline pilot for Ryanair. And we went out decorating this house. And I tell you what, he did a darn good job of the landing. Yeah, boom, boom. So yes, there I was trying to find a viable occupation, but I became more and more busy doing things like this, talking to people like yourselves. I started with Marie Curie doing their online quizzes and raised over £100,000 for Marie Curie doing an online quiz every week. With Debbie McGee as well. I was joined by Debbie McGee, and I found myself actually getting very, very busy online, which was tremendous. So I didn't really need to sort of retrain totally, but I did give it a go with my brush, like that. I could have been a delivery driver. I could have been a cleaner. And once I'd left people's houses, that would have left a vacuum. But, it was a good laugh. And actually, I'll be honest with you, I quite enjoyed a little bit of the lockdown because I'm normally tearing around the country doing shows and television appearances. And that's a lot of driving. And I've only got a Rolls Canardly, and it rolls down the hills and can hardly roll up the other side. So actually, to put my little paws up, and I sat in the garden, and I was able to see the wildlife and just take life a little bit slower. I was fortunate enough not to be ill because it was a terribly difficult time for a lot of families. and I kept myself to myself, and I've sort of, recharged the battery. So now I'm aching to get out there, get back entertaining, and do what I do properly, which is, make people moan at my terrible jokes.
Now, obviously, yeah, like we say, life has kind of gone online. I imagine you are egging to get back to normal life because there's only so much you can do on Zoom, and seeing people face to face is the best way.
Well, I think that, everybody tried to watch all these musicals and things online. I watched Hamilton online, that was on Disney Plus. But you know what? There's something that you miss. You might as well just watch a Netflix movie, to be honest with you, because there's something about the collective group enjoying a show together, a live show, and the power of the music that's up on that stage. And I sort of missed that. So I was fortunate at Christmas that the Theatre Royal Windsor were able to put on our pantomime for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks. I was there with Debbie McGee, and by Jove, we'd missed that audience. And I think the audience had missed us as well. And although we were closed down early, we were able to put it out online for everybody that couldn't get to see it. But as I said, it's not quite the same, because pantomime particularly relies on the audience. They are half the show with their shouting, "Oh, no, we're not, it's behind you." And I really miss that. So this year I did record an online pantomime, but there wasn't a real audience, and it's not the same. So, we all want to get out there, and it's the collective experience of the audience enjoying our terrible jokes together and having a great time, and then going out talking about it with their friends, getting on the underground or in their cars to talk about how good it was. So we've missed it, and I do hope we get back to normal, maybe not this year entirely, but for other years, next year. I hope my diary's very full for next year.
Now, I mean, obviously you are known for doing pantos, and Windsor's kind of become a bit of a home for you. I mean, what was it that attracted you to Windsor and the beautiful theatre there?
Well, it's funny. I was with Kudos for a number of years, and then, as things do, they change. And I was asked if I'd like to go to the Theatre Royal Windsor. I've been there many times to see shows, and it's actually quite a magical theatre. Opposite the castle, the royals come along and see the shows, but they create a sort of a family, a pantomime family. They like to have their regulars come back every year, and the audience like that as well. And they get to know everybody, and you get to see on the front rows the same people will be sat on the front rows year on, year out. They'll be bringing umbrellas because they know they're going to get wet, and they bring their own, water squirters to squirt us on the stage. So it becomes a family. We know everybody front of house. So my first year there, I did Aladdin with Peter Duncan, and it was so fabulous. I was there for 6 weeks, I think, at the time, and it was tremendous. And I think it's the most Christmassy town I've ever spent Christmas in. They light up the castle. It's only a small town. You're opposite the river in Eton. It's beautiful, and I recommend to anybody. Well, Reading is quite close, isn't it? The Reading
Very
Hospital.
close.
To get yourself to Windsor, because it is a magical place to go shopping during the day, have a spot of lunch, and then go and see the pantomime and watch the kids' eyes light up. So, and 7 years later, I'm still performing there. And, it would take something like the Palladium invite, I think, to take me away. I really do love everybody in Windsor. I love the Windsor audiences. I love working with Stephen Blakely from Heartbeat, who does all the writing. Mr. Martin Cabell-Reid is normally the comedy man alongside me. And we work together touring the country as my mister. So I've got a great relationship with him and the theatre and the audiences. And by Jove, it doesn't half make Christmas.
Now, do you remember when it was that you became interested in being in the limelight and being on stage? Do you remember how that came about?
I don't know, folks used to say I was born on stage, and, apparently the audience liked it so much, my mother kept it in the act. Yeah, I was born on stage. No, it was really the David Nixon show, 1963. I had a little sample of fame, what it was like to be on the television. And I mean, there are some people still alive who remember me in black and white in those days with David Nixon. But it was a couple of years after that, before the actual Basil Brush show really hit on BBC on a Saturday night after Doctor Who. And it's so interesting because I don't quite know how it's worked out, but I was on the air for about 20 years, then went off the air for a number of years, and back in 2000, which is the generation that you must have seen. But everybody seems to say, I grew up with you, Basil, which was impossible because there was a lost generation from the late 80s and the 90s. But I'm rather proud that lots of folks are still here that remember me in black and white And here I am yourself remembering me with Master Dave and Mr. Stephen and Cousin Mortimer. And I've sort of transcended the generations, and I think that's wonderful. What's interesting is I'm now on on a couple of websites where you can do messages. There's Cameo, Celeb VM, and Thrills. And it's hilarious because I'm doing people's birthdays who are turning 18 to about 25, which is your generation, and lots of people from sort of 40 to 75, which was the other generation. And it's keeping me so busy wishing them all happy birthday and people saying, I used to grow up with you, with Basil Brush, I love you. And I'm rather proud of that and very humbled that you so want to speak to a furry, furloughed fox who's been around for 60 odd years.
I mean, the other thing I have to ask is obviously you haven't aged at all. What's your sort of your secret to keeping so youthful?
Anybody who thinks I've had a facelift are talking out the Botox. Yeah, boom, boom. Now, what you do is you put cucumber over your eyes, a bit of lettuce on your nose, tomato in your ears. Doesn't do any good, but it will remind you of your salad days. Oh. No, just get a refurb like the doctor. I sort of get a refurb, every few years. And one of these days I might come back as a different gender. Who knows, like the doctor did. I don't know. But nowadays, with high definition television, of course, I've got to make sure that my brush is in tip-top condition all the time. And my fur, is well groomed with no fleas or nits or mange. So I've got a personal stylist, and the things he says are very personal indeed, Mr. Durrell. And he sorts me out every couple of months. I get deloused and anti-mange.
I was going to say, I mean, you obviously have so many fans, and for you, where's the kind of strangest place that you've come across a fan, and it must be quite strange when you have those weird experiences.
Oh, crikey, the strangest place. I mean, obviously, you have to go incognito sometimes by the seaside when I'm doing some of the holiday camps. I just turn my brush into one of those candy floss things and just walk down the street, and everybody keeps chasing after me trying to lick it. But it's very fun. Put a couple of shades on, and nobody knows who I am. But it's amazing when you're traveling. People are going, crikey, that's Basil Brush, that is. And I remember going to Australia a few years ago, and when you're walking, through the quarantine and all of that, and it says, you can't bring any money in, and you can't bring any fruit in. And it says, and if you bring fur in, $10,000 fine. Fur, can't bring fur in. Well, I had a good look around myself, and I think this is not going to go down very well. And they literally grabbed hold of me. They wouldn't let me in. I had to have what they call a Brazilian, and that hurt, and literally managed to get through. And they said, crikey, you're Basil Brush. Give us a boom boom. And I realized how inappropriate a boom boom was at an airport once they'd strapped me down to the table, full internal, until they let me out the other side. And I said, what I want to do is I want to go to a pub where you see everyday Australians just kind of hanging out, and they put me back on the plane back to London. So here I am. I think that was very strange. Airport lounges, and it's where people don't expect to see a real life talking fox. I have a photograph of me. It was traveling first class, actually, on British Airways, and they wanted the picture. And there I was, sleeping in first class, full. That'll be out there somewhere on the British Airways website. But yeah, real life talking fox amongst you human beings. I think it's a strange thing to see any day of the week.
And also, we must give a shout out to all the amazing key workers and the NHS staff out there. I mean, what's your opinion been of the hard work that they've been doing, the amazing work they've been doing?
Well, I mean, all the extra hours, and I think the stress they've all been under has been fantastic. And I was always there trying to give them a round of applause, which was never quite so simple with my paws. But I would come out every night, all the evenings when everybody got on their balconies and gave them a round of applause. I think it's been extremely hard for all of them, and they've done everything above and beyond the call of duty. I mean, I always say, I go out there entertaining people, and that's my job. What they do, that's a proper job, and I had my jab recently. I went in and had my first jab, and they gave me a mange jab at the same time. And they were all there all day doing that. I think they're fantastic, and I'd give them a pay rise.
Definitely, definitely. Now, just before we go, I mean, is there a dream for Basil Brush one day? What would you love to do going forward? Is there something you really want to do?
Before I hang up my brush, I would really, really, really like to be back on a Saturday night with a Basil Brush show. for all the generations, like yourself and your grandparents and your great grandparents and your great grandparents, and I'll get there in the end. That would be wonderful, a wonderful pinnacle to be back on the BBC on a Saturday night, entertaining as we used to do. Because Doctor Who's come back, isn't it?
Exactly. We'd love to
Doctor
see you
Who, I
back
think.
on.
Yeah, I think it's about time, the Basil Brush show. I'd love that. But the main thing is I'm enjoying the journey, Mr. Matt. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And they always say if you can find a job that you love doing, you'll never do a day's work in your life. And I haven't done a day's work in my life. I've just been Basil Brush and had a great time. And in these difficult times like this pandemic, you are allowed to smile, We are allowed actually to enjoy ourselves. And I hope that over the last year, I was able to make some smiles in difficult circumstances for some people when we were having Zoom meetings and things. And I thought that was my job over the last 12 months. I'm not talented enough or clever enough to do the jobs that those nurses do. But if I can make them smile when they get back home and have a little grin, well, I've done my job jolly well.
Perfect. Now, just before we go, any messages you'd like to give to anyone who is currently in hospital at the moment? What would you like to say to them?
Laughter is the best medicine. And listen to the nurses. And if you want to have a good laugh, copy this poem, right, that I'm going to teach you now. I'm going to teach you all a little poem. And then you have to teach it to the nurses, especially the kids. I think the kids will like this. You teach it to the nurses and see if they get it wrong. And you'll understand what happens when they get it wrong. It goes like this. I'll do it quickly first because it's meant to be done as fast as you can. One smart fella, he felt smart. Two smart fellas, they felt smart. Three smart fellas, they all felt smart together. That's correct. So one line at a time, you teach them to say, one smart fella, he felt smart. Go on, Matt.
One
Yeah, exactly. You couldn't do it, could you? Right. So it's one smart fella, he felt smart. Go.
One smart fella, he smelt fart.
Right. Try the second line. Two smart fellas, they felt smart.
Two smart fellas, they felt smart.
Yeah, I tell
it's
you
really
what,
hard.
7-year-olds are a lot better than you. And this last time, as fast as you can. Three smart fellas, they all felt smart together. Go.
Three smart fellas, they all smelt fart together.
And I think the kids will have a bit of a laugh when the doctor comes in and say, I've got a poem for you. Let me teach you this. And, I'm there on Cameo, Celeb VM and Thrills. I can do birthday messages. I've done a couple of marriage proposals. Any messages like that, I'm available from my front room and I'll be here doing messages day and night if somebody wants them.
Thank you so much, Basil. It's been an absolute pleasure. Of course, keep safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
And you as well. Lots of love to everybody there in Reading Hospital. Boom, boom.